Drum roll, and we're live, 7:25. Tonight we are going to talk about, I actually posted a video today, which I haven't done. Excuse me, I got all excited. I actually posted a video tonight, and I haven't done it in a while, and I'm going to start doing it more because I need to. That's literally my job. And the video that I posted was the testing that I did on my low buck truck camshaft. And given its similarity in specs to the Brian Tooley Racing Truck Norris cam, it's not surprising it does similar things. Not unlike the test that I did with the 4 other similar cams, like the Chupacabra and the cam from Cam Motion and the cam from Summit. And you know, that's a thing that a lot of guys don't understand. It's and admittedly, I understand where they're coming from, because I've been there. I was there, you know, through a lot of my career, and certainly before I started doing this. You know, if you don't understand cams and you don't know, then you don't know. But the using logic helps. And if you figure that, hey, look, these cams have very similar specs, are they going to make similar power? And the answer to that is yes, they're going to. If you get 2 cams that both are 220, 220 at 50, they're going to do really similar things. It doesn't matter this, you know, one is whoever. It doesn't matter the name attached to it. Now, if they change the lobe separation angle a lot, maybe they change the lift, maybe they advance the cam, they change the lobe centerline angle. If they did other things to it, then yeah, we can have some changes. But cams with similar specs are going to make similar power. That's just, you know, that's just physics. That's just science. That's literally just science. So it did, you know, it did kind of what we would expect. It certainly did what I expected. And having run them before, I knew what they would do when we were testing them. But the interesting thing on this one is I tested it when we did it, compared it to the factory LM7 cam and not the HO cam, or I call it the HO cam only because way back in the day when I was trying to gather together all the cams for the video that I did where we compared, you know, tried to get all of the, or at least one of all of the cams for the factory stuff. Now it's hard to get, you know, especially back then, but even now it'd be hard to get all of the cams because there's some that have like really, really tiny differences. They change the duration, or at least according to the internet. Now, I don't know how, and we don't even know how true all this stuff is, whether or not they've cam doctored them, whether they got the specs from the OEMs, whether they're telling the truth about that, whether they know, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on there. But if you have a camshaft that's 191, 190, and you have another one that's 191, 191, or 191, 192, what's that going to do? Having tested lots of cams with very similar specs like that, I remember doing a particular cam test I told somebody that would help them out with, and they were testing cams. I think they were doing it for an LS7 base motor, and they were testing cams, and they were changing the, you know, intake and exhaust duration by 1 or 2 degrees. I'm like, why are you doing that? Well, this one has got this, and this one's got this, and this has got these magic things. I'm like, well, I said, look, I'll help you. I told you that I would, and we'll go through all this. I said, I can tell you right now by looking at the cards on these. I said, if we see anything on the dyno, I said, I'm honestly going to be surprised, because you didn't change the cams enough. These are the same kinds of cams. If you change something 1 degree of duration, that's not going to do anything. If you change something 10 degrees, now we have something. If you change the valve events, the opening or closing events by a few degrees, we've got something. Now we can talk about that. And that's what I like to do when I'm doing camshafts is, if you're trying to find out what something's doing, do a big jump. You can come back. But if you try to go up in 1 degree increments, it's going to be a lot of cam testing. and if you move 1 horsepower for each one of those, at the end, you have 10 horsepower. If you just sort of went there and goes, look, I changed this thing by 10 degrees and I only got 10 horsepower. Well, then doing it less than that was probably a waste of time. But on this camshaft, on the low buck truck camshaft, it did what we thought, what I thought it would do. We ran it on the 5.3. We ran it on the L33, with the 799 heads and the flat top with early truck manifold and the stock throttle body headers, and then compared it to the factory LM7 camshaft. And where I was going on this tangent was that I ran the comparison between that L33 camshaft. I didn't know what designation it was back then. I just knew that it was the HO camshaft because it was the high output, I guess, version of the 5.3 is what people called it back then, or at least that's what they called the cam. And there wasn't a big difference in the power output change for that camshaft on the 5.3 that we tested on. It was like 8 or 10 horsepower. And so not a ton, but some, enough to where if you had that in there, it would be better. But I wanted to put an LM7 camshaft in it, mostly because I don't remember what I did with the stock 5.3 cam. It might be in the 4.8 that I took down to the machine shop. And rather than spend a whole bunch of time searching through what might be 70, 80, 90 camshafts or whatever that I have laying around in various places, I just grabbed the LM7 camshaft and put that in. It just made life a lot easier. So we run a comparison test between those. And the way that I did the test is we ran the motor with stock cam, then with a low buck truck cam, then put the turbo on, and then did another cam swap with the turbo on because I wanted to run the turbo with the stock cam with stock LM7 camshaft as well too, mostly because we want to show what the difference was under boost and then what the difference was NA and see if we had gained power under boost, which we did. And as it turned out, I was just running it. I thought, well, this is just going to be kind of a quickie test, even though turbo tests are hardly ever like that. This one went fairly smoothly. But what I wanted to because we wanted to make it quick, I didn't hook up a boost controller, and I don't think the TC1 controller is hooked up anymore at Westech. I would want to run one now with the Holly, but all I did was just hook a reference line up from the intake manifold, and then we teed it and went to both wastegates on the turbo setup the way that we normally do when we're controlling the wastegates. And so we just put 7-pound springs in them. And we got near 7 pounds for both of them, but on the stock cam version, it ended up being a little bit more boost than it was a little more than half a pound. And so we would change the boost, it would change the power output based on the power output per pound of boost. It would change the peak number on the cammed one because it had slightly lower boost. It would have made more power with the camshaft, but it did what we wanted it to do. It did what it was supposed to do and would have done more instead of 6.7 pounds or whatever, and it was 7.3 pounds, I think, are the numbers. We would have had another 15 or 20 horsepower or something like that. So it was doing what it was supposed to do relative to the change in boost, relative to the NA motor. And it did what it was supposed to with the stock cam. It did what it was supposed to with the other cam. The cam change was worth about 67 or 68 horsepower from peak to peak, and did well when we ran the motor with a turbo. We ran on E85. And I tried running on E85 NA again. There just didn't really seem to be any change. We're running the motor cold, so on 91 we have all of the timing in it that it's going to want. So it just doesn't really respond to more timing. The one exception to that is, if you watch the video, there's some jaggedy parts on the curve. And I saw this, looking back, I saw this on another test that I did too. I was trying to find it. It might be, I thought it was one of the L33 tests. So I'm going to go back tonight after I get off and take a look at that. But I saw, in looking at the timing curves that there was a timing change there. In fact, somebody had commented way back when we were talking about this, look and see if they're at that RPM range or near that RPM range, if there is a jump in timing going from, 24 degrees to 26 degrees or vice versa or whatever. Look and see if that's going on. And that actually was it. And I didn't see that until after we were done and I was editing and I could look at that. I'm like, yeah, we could have made that a little bit. I mean, I don't think it would have changed the power output. I just think it would have made this curve smooth so it looked nice. It's just more aesthetically appealing. But otherwise it did exactly what we expected it to do. And so if you're, $179 camshaft, it makes good power. It works with a turbo. We've run it with nitrous, and if you put nitrous on that instead of 422 horsepower, it'd make 522 if you put a 100 shot on it. So it works well with that. You can run it with a stock converter, particularly on a 5.3. I still think on a 4.8, I still think that's a little bit iffy. The 6.0 or 6.2, not a problem at all. On any of those, you gain power from putting a converter on it anyway, regardless of what camshaft you put on. If you put this one on it, you put the one step up from this that I have, the Truck Plus, or any of the Chupacabra or BTR Truck Norris or a Hot Rod or any of those. If you put a converter in it, it's good. You're going to get an improvement in acceleration. It's going to have more performance. A converter is a good idea. But these will work with that, and you can get them to idle and stuff. And so that'll works good. And so on that end of the mild spectrum, they work fairly well. They have good torque. It made a lot more peak torque than stock. I think we picked up 30 or 40 foot-pounds. Let's see here. Yeah, 33 foot-pounds of torque. So it did good there. But also on the other end of the spectrum, it picked up a lot of power, picked up 67 horsepower peak to peak, and even more out beyond that. But the other thing is, with the turbo, you could take and make 1,000 horsepower fairly easily with this camshaft. I mean, we were already at 422, and we were less than 7 pounds, and we were at 630 or 40 or something like that. Yeah, 629. So it just takes more boost to go up. I mean, it would take a fair bit of boost to get to 1,000 horsepower. But the turbo that we had on it would have done that. It was a S485, so it had enough turbo to do that. And my point is that even with a camshaft like this, which most people would call, a kind of truck cam, easy to make really big power with it also. And the nice thing is it bookends. It's a bookend cam. You can use it with a stock converter, and it can make the big power numbers too. And if you want something with, even more camshaft power, then the slightly bigger Truck Plus cam also works. Although I don't think I would use that with a stock converter on a 5.3. On a 6.0, I think you could do that, but I don't think so on a 5.3. But good power from either one of those. They work fine. And like I said, under boost, I haven't found a cam yet that doesn't work well and respond well. If you can get it to run good NA, and you have the right timing curve and the right airfield curve, and the thing runs good NA, and then you add boost to it. If you don't have other kinds of problems like valve float or plug gap or ring gap, and you have enough fuel and you have enough timing and all that, and you start adding boost to it, it just works. I mean, they just respond and start making power as a multiple of whatever's there. And that's the great thing about this. And it's something, and I keep harping on that because I wish that's something that somebody would have told me long ago when I was going into this turbo thing. If they would have explained that to me, if Gale Banks would have explained that to me, or Corky or any of these guys, Bob Norwood, if any of them would have sat down and said, hey, look, here's what happens. Rather than try to make it, complex and voodoo and all that I think, not those particular guys, but I think turbos back in the day when I was trying to learn about it, I think there's less like common knowledge about them. And so, guys, I don't know if they purposely tried to keep them secret, or maybe they didn't know the answer, or they didn't look at it like this. Maybe they didn't view it like this. They're like, hey, look, every time I put a turbo on this, it does this. I'm sure Gale knew that way back in the day. But I wish that somebody would have said this to me. Hey, look, if you have a 400 horsepower motor and you add a half a bar, it's going to make near 600. It should make near 600. If you add 1 bar, your 400 horsepower motor could make 800. That would have been a real easy place for most of us, certainly for me. It would have been a real easy place for most of us to start with and go, oh, that makes sense. So if I add this much boost, it should do this. And then now if you're not doing that, or if somebody tells you, oh yeah, this turbo makes 50 horsepower per pound of boost. Well, it can't do that on a 200 or 300 horsepower motor. That's just not, the math doesn't work out like that. Or if you put 8 or 10 pounds of boost in it and you only gained 100 horsepower, you're like, man, there's a problem here. What is the issue? What is going on? Is the spark blowing out? Is it too lean? Do I not have enough timing? Then you can also, just from that information, enough to start looking at other things, because there could be a problem. Somebody could be misleading you, all that stuff. So that's why I keep doing it. What's the best cam for the 5.3 LS for gains? How much power? Well, let's go backwards. There's no best cam, but tell me how much power you're trying to make. Garage, what's going on? Thank you. How are you doing? From Alabama. I'm doing fine. Getaway. Tim, what's going on? Happy late Sunday. Yeah, I'm going to cut this a little bit short. My family's watching the Copa soccer finals. Messi's playing, so I want to go watch that with them. Gen 353 for horsepower and it's carbureted. Just tell me what kind of power you're trying to make and what else you have. Are you just doing a cam and is it a stock bottom end and stuff? Then you have a limited amount of camshaft that you could put in there because you only have a limited amount of piston to valve clearance. Do you only care about peak horsepower? Do you only care about peak torque? I just need more information. 204, 218 or 235, 248. Those are opposite ends. What heads does an L83 have? What 3 digits? I don't know on the LT. It has L83 heads, but I don't know what the casting number is. Are there test results for a low buck truck and a stock 6-liter? I have not run that. Decided on a 212, 218, 553, 110, GT and a G42, 1.5 on my big bore 4.8. Holley ultra low ram. Hopefully it'll run good. So you have a 4.8 with a Holley low ram on it? Are you wanting to rev it really high? Dan, so 20 pounds to make 1,000 horsepower on a 400 horsepower motor you're talking about, right? Because that maths out. What should I expect to see from a 218, 224 stage 3 truck cam? 223, 249. AFR 215 heads on my 383 stroker with a Whipple 2.3. I don't know. I don't know how you have the Whipple setup. If you're just changing the camshaft, or you're changing the camshaft and the heads, so the boost should come down and the power should go up, assuming that you're spinning the blower the same. You just weren't ready to hear what they were saying. Most guys don't get info unless they have the steps, unless they have the steps up to it. That really wasn't the case with me. If you're talking about my comment about Gale and those guys, I understood turbos, but nobody, even now, I think that I'm the only one. Even now, Gale won't explain it that way. Bob wouldn't have either. Corky wouldn't. Nobody would explain it that way. And I think that they should. I think that they should make it easier for people to understand so that the average guy can understand. Because you have to teach to your audience and not teach to your level of understanding. That's not good teaching. Thanks for all your effort sharing knowledge with us. Richard, do you have any test videos of? Marshall, I just posted a video today. That's what we're talking about right now. Do you want one of the bigger cam? I haven't run the test on. We've dyno tested it, but I haven't run a video on the 219 cam. Would like to see some low buck turbo tests. Yes, Racing 78, 75. I have videos up of, you just want to see one of the G42 1450, and I don't have one of that, but I have lots of the S475 and the 7875 and twin GT35s. So we know what those do. Have you tested a 650 horsepower LS with stock exhaust manifolds of extremely limited space in a custom car? What sort of hit do you think it'll take? I don't care much about low and mid-range torque. It is going to lose power, and I do have one test that we did on a stroker. I think I did that test on a 427, And we may have also done it on a 415 or something like that. I also did some supercharged stuff. Supercharged motors didn't seem to be as affected by the headers. Let's see. AFR heads. Yes, here we go. There's a stock exhaust manifold. Shorty headers. Okay, this is on a 680 horsepower 427. It's my old LSX Magnificent 7 test I did. We got a BTR stage 4 cam. Let's see. Got a mast, a single plane intake manifold, and an adapter, and then a 4500 4-hole deal. So with stock exhaust manifolds compared to long tubes, down at 36 or 3700, 420, it was down almost 60 foot-pounds of torque. Up at the top, it was 638 versus 681. So not quite 50 horsepower. And was worse through the whole curve. Shorty headers picked it up a little bit. Actually, kind of more than I thought they would. The shorty headers, 38 to 60. So that's a pretty good amount. So 22 from the shorty headers. So if you can fit shorty headers in there, those would be better than stock exhaust manifolds on that bigger motor. Dart, where can you buy the cams? I put my email address, and I put it in the video. You just send me an email and then use PayPal. Very easy. Now that PayPal is working, it's all good. So put my email address down, and you can use that, and then I'll tell you how to order them. Jason, there's no dumb questions. We're here. Everybody's here to help. You have an L20, which is a 4.8 liter, right? Would there be any value in adding an L99 camshaft? I think, isn't the L99 cam a VVT cam? Or is that just the L92? That's the one in the automatic, right? That's like basically the automatic version of the LS3. So you can't, if that's a VVT cam, you can't put that in. If it's not a VVT cam, it would make more peak power than the more power than your little 4.8 cam, but there are much better cams for that. How much boost on a 6-liter to make 800 wheel horsepower? Forged bottom end, 243, 1001. Not very much. Is your 7675 going to do 800 wheel horsepower? What 7675 do you have? I don't. Forged bottom end, 227 cam. I'm assuming the stock intake and stock heads. I don't think that thing's going to make 400 at the tire NA. I think it's going to be more than 15 pounds. I want a bed mounted turbo. Stock 454. Got to run 5 pounds and not cut ring gap if I'm not going to be racing it. Yeah, you probably could get away with it. It depends on where the ring gap is. It depends on what your tune is. But I've run lots of stuff with low boost and not put ring gap in it. If the motor's out and you can take it apart and put ring gap in it, it would be better, but it probably will work. Can I just bring my truck to you? I don't have a shop or anything, so I don't do customer work. Where do you get your shirts? I should have shirts in, not turbo cam ones, but it'll be wrong. The first ones will be wrong cam. I should have those in on Monday or Tuesday, and then they'll be available for sale. I'll announce it. And I already have a bunch I'm sending out for people who took advantage of a deal I did. Dan, he's going to need more than 9 pounds to make 800 at the tire. That a stock 6-liter with a stock intake and a stock set of heads, a cam 6-liter is not going to make 400 at the tire, not through an automatic. Richard, you have a stock 350 Holley and BS Racing 7875 turbo truck, runs great. Take time for the turbo to kick in, but it's very fun. I'm glad to hear it. My wife made these first ones that I did, but now I have a t-shirt company that's making stuff. Yeah, empty pockets. I don't have a G42 1450, but I think you can kind of see at the same boost these things are pretty similar. Richard, always a pleasure. 06 GMC 5.3 liter series. I wasn't able to reach. Well, I don't know what you mean by book horsepower. Is the motor rated at 330? And is it rated at 330 at the tire? Because that's no factory rating is at the tire. So I don't know what your unless you did it on the engine dyno. So give me more information. Oh, the L20s VVT also. Oh, okay. I didn't realize that they did a VVT 4.8 liter. Andrew, the cams I'm selling are 179 shipped. Matt, what's going on? How about some Nissan tuning soon? Mini trucks. Mini trucks have always been cool, but I don't. Who does Nissan tuning? The only thing that we ever heard of back in the day was Wolf back then. Richard, how important is a larger intercooler? It's very important. It's important for two reasons. One, for cooling, for dropping the charge temperature, and then the other for flow. I have intercooler videos up to show what they do. 800 horsepower is going to need a fairly good size intercooler. Richard, what do you want to process payment for the intake? I replied to your email a while back asking how and when, how to do so. What intake are you talking about? If you're talking about one of the Westech intake manifolds, it's difficult to even try to help those guys, but it's difficult. Precision 7675. Okay, that's a pretty good turbo. Gen 3 truck intake, 243 head springs, Johnson tie bar lifters, etc. RP main says and head says, not that it matters. So if it doesn't make 400 at the tire through that transmission and rear end and stuff, then if it doesn't make 400, it's going to need more than 15 pounds, or it's going to need 15 or more pounds to get to 800. Got more questions? Yeah, Ed, just come here, ask away, man. When are you going to start the enter to win this Geo? I don't think anybody wants that Geo, and I need it. I just need it as the thing that I can use to dyno test the Sprint turbo combinations for Bonneville. I have the specs on each: 190, 191, 195, 200. Well, Jason, that cam swap's not going to require springs because they're both sub 500 lifts, so that you can run the stock truck springs with that. Any Mark IV cams, like big block Chevy stuff? Stealth intake from Westech, just reach back, whatever you're ready. Oh, the YN Stealth, the carbureted one. Empty pockets. I appreciate the offer. I don't want to ship a turbo back and forth across wherever it has to come into from. New heads, cam, F plus, twin GT35 kit is in. Send the car out for a Mustang 2 front end. Cool. I don't think I have any big block Chevy Mark IV cams. I'd have to look up and see. First of all, I can't run VVT cams, so and haven't run them, so I don't know what the result would be for those two. But judging by the change in duration, some change in exhaust duration. So I would expect a little more power on top. And wouldn't be surprised if it's maybe a little softer down low. Billy, you just want a window sticker? I do need to do stickers, right? Some wrong cam stickers. I mean, that's basically what these are. They were cut on a Cricut, I think. Cricut. Turbo truck cams. Full of turbo-y goodness. Razor blade rebuild. That should be a shirt too, also, right? Razor blade rebuilds. That whole Metro looks like it's a razor blade rebuild. Aerosol overhaul. That's right. Stickers are worth 15. They are, and you don't even have to have them on your car. You can just have them on your toolbox. I haven't bought another turbo yet. I mean a blower yet. I need to get another supercharger. And now after seeing Tony's draw through turbo slant 6, it makes me want to do another draw through thing. Dan, I'm going to run it at Bonneville, not El Mirage. Frankie, thank you for watching. we gotta go get on the big course, Dan. Not the big course. 3 miles will be more than enough for that. For the I've never even when I was doing the sprint stuff, we only ran the maxed in miles, so it wasn't even. I've never run it for 3 miles. The one time I went to Bonneville, it looked huge. It is. It's very cool. And El Mirage is really cool, too. To see guys landing planes out there and stuff. And all the weird cars that are out there. It is awesome. Frankie, you have an L96 with a bad cam journal? Bad cam journals? Is it repairable? You want to repair the cam? You should just put a new cam in it. If the journals are bad, did you damage the cam bearings? Yeah, Dan, that's one of the few places on Earth you can see the curvature. Or I guess if you're a flat earther, you could see the flatness of the Earth too. I'd like to see the F303 versus a classic F303. The Summit version is going to make more peak power. Hot Rod Guy Garage ran a 10-second 8th with his Metro. What did he do to it? I mean, isn't that like a 0 to 60 time of a Sprint Turbo will do that from 0 to 60. Spun completely and damaged the block. That's a lot more difficult if it damaged the block. If it grabbed the bearings and spun them in the housing, guys might be able to like line bore the cam journals and then put oversized bearings in it. If it's an aluminum block, it might be worth it, but it's not going to be cheap. What size injectors you recommend for a 4.8 liter turbo, 93 or 85 pump gas? Well, E85 is going to need something that's like 30% bigger, but 1,000 horsepower on gas is an 80-pound injector. If you're going to do 1,000 horsepower on E85, it's got to be bigger than that. So 1,000 cc's or 1,200 cc's. Are you sure the Metro has 3 miles wide open in it without refurbishing the chassis? This one wouldn't. The one that it's going in does. It's already been at Bonneville a lot. Picked it out to run in that 351 Windsor with Promax heads. I'm hoping to see 400 to 450 at the crank. Gen 4 LS cam sensor is up front. I presume it reads the timing gear up front there. Yeah, the timing gear has little bumps on it. The cam sprocket has little bumps on it, and that's if that's 58X. I don't remember if it has the sensor up front, then it's probably a 4X. So it's going to have four different bumps on it. It also has a tendency to spin cam bearings if oil pressure goes away. A good machine shop can fix it, but a new block is probably cheaper. What size turbo would you suggest for a 2.9 liter Atlas 4-cylinder for a street and strip application? I think, are you just doing a stock one? And then how much power are you wanting to make? I think a GT3076 probably for that. You want to run the VVT cam with the turbo? Empty pockets, you just need enough fuel to supply the power level safely. I don't know how long you're going to be using it, but I'm waiting for a Honda J50, the new Honda V8, basically two K24s mated together. Raptor, yeah, the dual plane is definitely going to feel better. And depending on how you tip the curve, typically for a single plane and a dual plane, where one starts making more than the other, the interesting test is to run them like down the quarter mile and see where one of them might be better than the other. You know, does the dual plane 60 foot better, and then because of where you're shifting or using more of the single plane stuff, all of that stuff is kind of cool. Which I like to see stuff go from the dyno to the track to see, as long as they can get it tuned properly for the track, get the thing hooked up and stuff. That's just extra. That's just, you know, even more data basically. We've got a nice Pulsar dual ball bearing T51R GTX 3076 3-inch V band. If the Alice guy needs one. That's part of the reason why they went with a single bolt cam versus a 3-bolt. The single bolt cam versus the 3-bolt, it has nothing to, it doesn't determine whether or not it's a 1X or 4X, because they made both of them. So the single bolt is just that has more to do with the camshaft. And you can get 3-bolt stuff, particularly the LS2, in a 1X or a 4X. So they made both of those. They made 4Xs in 3 bolts, and they made 4Xs in single bolts also. I don't think they ever did I don't think they ever did a 1X with a single bolt cam. Somebody might correct me if I don't remember if they did that. Single bolt is VVT. That's not true. Not all single bolts are VVT. I think that the LS3 is a single bolt. One of those factory cams that are not VVT cams is a single bolt. As it was an LS3 or an LS7 or an LS9, one of those was a single bolt. Because I remember when we were doing the testing, I had to go through all of this. And I didn't run any VVT cams. My last 306 had terrible turbo lag. It's the 233, 244 cam and the Super Victor they're causing the turbo lag. Probably not the turbo. Is an L99 also a different compression than an LS3? $10.4 to 1 for that. Yeah, and it's saying that the L99 is 10.4 and that the LS3 is 10.7. I thought that the LS3 was a little bit more. Do you see an issue with 660 lift springs on a 553 lift cam? Yeah, I wouldn't do it. It's not necessary. And do you have? I'll be worried also about the spring rate on a 660 spring for a 550 lift cam. And the farther you are away from coil bind, the more problematic the spring is going to be. The more unstable the spring is going to be. Got 2 more minutes. Definitely the cam. We decided after the engine blew up. Went to a 351, 210 heads, 114 LSA. The LSA is fine, but because the tight LSA that you had on the other cam could be beneficial for low speed power. It's just that a 302 with a 230 cam and a single plane intake manifold is not going to be very responsive. 226 and 236, yeah, would be better than the bigger cam. Bill, yeah, I know Billy really well. I don't think I've read his book though. Billy's good people. Did a lot of stuff with Billy for a lot of years. One more minute. Oh, we got ads going right now. It is the Copa Finals. Argentina is playing Colombia, and we just went and saw a match down in, I don't know, somewhere down by Santa Clara or somewhere, down by down past Fremont and San Jose. We went to see Colombia and maybe Brazil. It's good. Very, very enthusiastic soccer fans. Oh yeah, Raptor. I forgot about that. You went up in displacement. So if you went up in displacement down to camshaft, both of those are the right way. Yeah, empty pockets. If you have a 212, 218, and a 553 lift, you could put Brian Tooley has cams for $79. Or you could use on a 553 lift, you could use an LS6 or an LS3 spring, a factory one. Or Deca 80 is enough for a 5.3, a 5.7, 12 pounds of boost on the 85. I don't know how much power you're making because I don't know what the NA power output is. So the boost and the displacement don't mean anything. We need a power output, really. What other sporting mods on a 6-liter block besides cam bearings and main bearings? What are you trying to do? I don't use the aluminum blocks for anything over 1,000 horsepower unless it's the 5.3 aluminum blocks. Not a LS1, LS2, or LS3. 500 horsepower, no boost. You don't have to do anything to it. Just the way that it is fine. I mean, you have to fix any problems that you have with it, but otherwise, you don't need you don't need to like main studs or head studs or any of that stuff. 500 horsepower on a 6-liter is just a cammed 6-liter. That's pretty easy to do. It's a nice thing about 6 liters. They're more bigger and more better. And on that note, it's time for soccer. I will see you guys all tomorrow. Somebody need to remind me. I didn't even have a poll. What's going on with the no poll, man?